Thank you for joining me on the Get What You Want podcast, where getting what you want isn't always what you think it is. My wish for you is that this show will create an awareness within yourself of what you really want and the possibility of getting it. Let's go create. My guest today is Tim Carlin. Tim was a colonel in the United States Army, is a certified financial planner at V Wealth Advisors. Tim has been in service to others since age 10 when he served as an altar boy. He is a West Point graduate, having commanded at the company, battalion, and brigade level. Tim is a versatile leader with past responsibility at some of America's biggest companies, including PepsiCo, Conoco, Phillips 66 Company. Living an ordinary life, but achieving extraordinary results, Tim shows you through job loss, family hardship, and a cancer diagnosis to prosper, serve, and give back to others. Welcome, Tim. I'm super excited to have you today.
Well, thank you for having me, Shirley. This will be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited because we talked a little bit, and we've both had a lot of hardships. And I think that, you don't grow from a place of comfortable, right?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in the book that, in order to grow, we have to feel uncomfortable, and it isn't a good feeling at all, is it?
No, not when you're going through it, for sure.
Not at all.
Sometimes I realize, like, when I was younger, I look back at things that I went through and I think, how did I ever get through that? Or my kids would have never made it through that. And, a lot of times, like, when you're actually in it, you don't realize how uncomfortable it is because you're just surviving, getting through it, right? Mm-hmm. So we talked about that we both had hip replacements, and it's a little embarrassing because it's like kind of ages us a little bit. But when you don't have one, right? When you're just walking bone on bone, and you're just in all of this pain, you don't realize how good it's going to be on the other side. You just kind of survive each day and do what you got to do to get through it. And so I think that's kind of like a lot of things in life. That was just like one of my many trials. But tell me about your book. I didn't put that in the bio, so I really want to learn about it because what I know about you doesn't feel like you're ordinary. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, the book was from a perspective of being a very average person and having to kind of work hard to experience and get uncomfortable and do different things and eventually get what you want. So it's a little bit about resilience, a little bit about discipline. It's a little bit about delayed gratification. And all of those things kind of help you live an extraordinary life, just being ordinary. And that's really, when I look back on my life, I wanted to kind of share some principles, and I felt the book was a great way to do it.
I love that. So tell me about, I don't know, like, what makes you feel ordinary? Did you come from an ordinary family, or tell me a little bit about your background so what makes you feel ordinary?
So I'm very ordinary. Starting with where I came from, my background is Buffalo, New York, which many of your listeners know is a very ordinary city. So I'm average as far as my intelligence per se, or my athletic ability. There's nothing really that special about me. But that kind of gave me a little bit of a drive to maybe live life with a little bit of a scrappiness or chip on my shoulder to maybe prove the critics wrong. So in the book, I talk about getting bullied when I was younger, and I talk about getting cut from the football team numerous times. And, how do I get beyond that? How do I get to where I'm the person I am today? So a lot of what's in the book can be relatable to children today on what they're struggling with and what we're struggling with.
I love that because, in the end, it really is just like our story, right? Everyone has their trials. Everyone has, subjectively, not everyone has been bullied. I have, so I know what that feels like. And objectively, some people seem to have a way harder life than other people. And, there have been times in my life when I wanted to just be boo-hoo. I had the hardest life. I had a way harder life than you, but we really don't know what other people are going through. So I think that it's awesome to, I interview a lot of people who I guess weren't ordinary or maybe didn't see themselves as ordinary. You know, like I've worked with a lot of very high achievers, athletes that are superhuman, you know, the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
celebrities, all types of people that don't consider themselves ordinary. But I do consider that, like, I lived kind of an ordinary life. I mean, yeah, I wasn't just really good at one thing. And so you do live like that, like, I've got to show them, I'm going to show them that I can be better at this, or I'm going to show them, you know. So tell me about, I know that in your book there are 8 principles, and is it 8? I think that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I remember. So let's talk about each of those, and how somebody in today's world, which is was way crazier than even our world, I think, growing up. Just talk about, like, if you're addressing a high school of kids and they're, you know, getting ready to go out into the world, like, can you take these 8 principles and maybe just talk about how you can go from being ordinary to extraordinary?
Yeah, I think, Shirley, the first one is getting uncomfortable. And in order for us to grow and learn, it just is uncomfortable. I mean, a lot of us out there today may not know quite what our children know, or our kids know about computers and technology, and how do we do certain things with that. And gosh, there's so much to learn on that field. So I think forcing yourself to get very uncomfortable, punching the wrong button every so often, is the first step. And what that tends to do is lead to the next step, reinvention. So I think one of the things we all have to realize is our children and even ourselves, we're going to constantly have to reinvent ourselves. So in the book, there's a little piece about COVID in there because it's coming out during this terrible pandemic that we're having. And we're going to reinvent ourselves as a country after this. And we're reinventing ourselves right now. So as a young kid, when you go through a tough time and you can't get what you want, because all of us are at that stage at some point in our life, we're not going to get what we want. Instead of getting disappointed or throwing a temper tantrum or withdrawing or getting angry, the book kind of teaches you how to reinvent yourself and find a way around the hill, through the hill, over the hill, above the hill, to get on the other side. So I like that.
I like that too. How many people do you think like to be uncomfortable?
No, I think I don't like to be uncomfortable. I mean, I was uncomfortable learning how to drive stick shift at West Point and learning how to drive a car. So one of the stories in the book is learning how to drive finally when I was 21 years old. Now, you're smiling. Most of your listeners are going to smile. And it's like, if you grew up on a farm, you may be driving at 10 or 8 years old on your grandpa or grandma's lap as she's driving or he's driving. Well, where I grew up, being ordinary, I grew up in a duplex. A family lived above us. I lived below. We had 5 people for one bathroom. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a homemaker. Very ordinary. My dad, in the course of growing up, didn't necessarily have money to buy cars for us or pay the insurance. And being a police officer, he saw all the terrible accidents that kids were in. So he didn't allow me to drive. So when I got into West Point, they don't allow you to drive until you're a senior. So I'm a senior at West Point. I still don't know how to drive a car. And back when we were going to college or growing up, they didn't have cars that were driver's ed cars that were non-discrete like they do today. Today, you pull up, there's a little sign that says driver's ed.
Yeah.
Well, when we grew up, there was a big flashing yellow banner or sign above the roof of the car that would blink.
Oh, I remember. Yes.
Student driver.
Yeah.
So I'm on West Point, and all these plebes, which are first-year cadets at West Point, see this car drive up, and a lot of them are from the South and Midwest where they're driving at 8 and 10 years old on the farm. And this city boy whose dad was a police officer now has to get in the car and learn how to drive. And it was just an uncomfortable experience.
Oh, I cannot even imagine.
it was just crazy. I mean, your listeners out there are probably thinking, oh my God, that would be so odd in today's world. Well, it was odd back then. So that's where I had to learn first how to drive. And to do that, though, it was very uncomfortable because I didn't have any other way around it.
I love it. I think that's so cool. My son actually is getting his license today, and he's 17 and a half.
And he probably bugged you about getting it earlier, didn't he?
No.
Good.
We had a couple of friends who were killed in car accidents. And so I can't decide if it's his nervousness or mine, which has been worse. But my husband's like, he needs to drive. He needs to eventually drive. Yeah, because I think if I had my way, my kids wouldn't have driven until they were 21 either. So I get that. But yeah, we're both about to embark on it uncomfortable today because I have to drive with him there and then let him get his license.
I'm so excited for him and for you. So, but that is nerve-wracking because now he's on his own driving and you're worried about your children all the time.
And his friends are already, most kids get their license on their 16th birthday.
Oh.
So I can't imagine what you went through back then. I can see that could be super uncomfortable.
But what's really funny though, and to bring it full circle about how you have to get uncomfortable in order to grow, now I'm racing cars at triple digit speeds on racetracks all over the country. And I'm not a professional racer. It's really amateur, but there's other cars on the track. We're going at high speeds, triple digit at times, and you're competing with one another. So going from not knowing how to drive at 21 to now all of a sudden being able to, maneuver these cars at high speed on racetracks. It's just
really cool.
Very interesting story about how to be patient, go through the pain and come out better on the other side.
Wow. That's awesome. So, okay. So uncomfortable reinvention. You just talked about that too, right? You almost completely became something opposite of that. If you want to finish talking more about that, or go to the next one, this is exciting to me.
Yeah, I think another one is to get uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to punch above your weight. And, what do I mean about that? Well, when my dad and I were young at the beach, we would go to the beach on Lake Erie and have a great time. And when he was teaching me how to swim, he'd stand about 15 feet from me and I'd swim underwater to him. But one time he kept moving back and back and back, and it felt my lungs were going to burst. And I was wondering what in the world was happening. And then I saw the dirt from his feet moving as he shuffled in the sand under the water, continually moving back. So I got mad and I said, I'm going to catch him and punch above my weight and get to him. And I finally tagged him, probably double the distance. And when you're a young boy, 5 or 6, that's a long way to go. So I came up, my lungs were ready to burst. But it taught me a lot about persevering, which gave me a chance then to get into West Point, complete Ranger School. And this is coming from someone who didn't even know what the Boy Scouts were. My idea of camping out was playing at my school playground and then making snow angels on the grass, looking up at the sky when the street lights came on, and then I knew it was time to get home.
Wow. Completely different. Okay, so uncomfortable, reinvention, what's number 3?
Yeah, the punch above your weight. And then the next one is discipline is freedom. And what I'm saying that is that involves kind of delayed gratification or doing the same thing, over and over again. So to get into West Point, I was average. I wasn't a good test taker. I mean, my grades were maybe a B or B plus in high school. So I wasn't this brainiac per se. So I had to keep taking the SAT test because the way the service academies work is they want kind of a whole person concept. They want someone with some leadership, someone who's athletic, and then someone with some smarts. Well, my math or verbal, I forgot which one was a little lower than the standard they set. So I went to Kaplan to learn and kept going back and taking the test over and over again to get better. And it took me about 6 times until I got into a range to where I was competitive to get into the school.
Wow.
And fortunately, they liked the tenacity and the ability not to take no as an answer. So I was able to get accepted.
I love that. So persevering is huge. And I realized Punch Above Your Weight was the number 3. Sorry.
Yeah, and they're all kind of intermingled there in my head somewhere, but there are really some good principles to live by, which is kind of fun. I think another one was along the lines of reinvention was actually I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma to learn. I was transferred there for my job, and I didn't know anyone. I was single at the time, and men don't like to dance. That's not really, generally speaking, what we like to do. So I figured in order to meet people, I had to learn how to country western dance. So I went and started taking country western dance lessons, and then started to go to the nightclubs, and my heart would beat through my chest as I would ask a lady to dance and try to use the steps I learned on the dance floor. And I quickly found out, though, that even though I would make mistakes, the more I can learn, the more I became like a George Clooney. So I think ladies like guys who can like play a musical instrument, or possibly dance.
Yes.
And I learned how to dance. It was very uncomfortable. I struggled for the longest time, but it finally clicked. And the reason I tell the story isn't so much because it was a way to meet ladies to dance. It's really, it opened up an opportunity to when I was laid off in 2002, after the 2001 crisis, whereby my buddy at the time, Jack Reinwarok, out of Chicago, I was living there then, a former Marine said, "Hey, Tim, I just saw an advertisement to become a gentleman host. You have to have good manners and know how to dance." Well, being a West Pointer, I think I had the manners down pretty well, but the dancing was the hard part. But what I did was I kept learning how to dance different dances. So as I moved around the country with promotions, I learned swing and foxtrot, tango, waltz, rumba, all these different types of dances. So I interviewed for the job and got accepted. So after getting laid off, I had this time and some resources where I could take a year off, and I became a gentleman host on board the Queen Elizabeth II cruise ship.
Wow.
Now, the Queen Elizabeth II is the premier cruise ship at that time in the Cunard line. And it was like a modern day version of old cruising, where you would dress up every night in a tuxedo and a beautiful gown, and you would have afternoon tea and very elegant. Didn't mean you didn't have fun and play in the pool and all that stuff, but when the sun went down, it became somewhat of a more throwback time, back to the turn of the century, and how folks dressed on the Titanic and how they interacted. I loved it, and my trip was completely paid for, and my job was to dance with single ladies on board the ship, teach them how to dance, or ladies whose husbands didn't want to dance. And it's a bona fide position. Everything was paid for. I had a regular stateroom, and I met some wonderful people that I talk about in the book that had been through the Holocaust and different experiences. And I wouldn't have been able to do this unless I got uncomfortable and learned how to dance way back in Tulsa, Oklahoma, country western two-step.
Are you feeling stuck in your relationship? Do you feel you need more? Whether it be more time, attention, security, gifts, intimacy, or companionship, your partner is likely experiencing something similar, yet both of you are not sure how to fix it. In Shirley Baldwin's best-selling book, Get What You Want From Your Man, she will show you how to get all of this and more. Get What You Want From Your Man is available nationwide through all major bookstores, Amazon.com, and through her website, www.getwhatyouwantguru.com.
Wow. That's crazy. And that sounds like the funnest job ever.
So it's just being open to being uncomfortable and making the best of a bad opportunity whether it's getting laid off or getting picked on or anything of that nature. So the reinvention is always there in how can I make something out of this where nothing exists.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because my same son that's getting his driver's license today is a ballroom dancer. And
Oh, great.
he wanted to drop out of soccer, and I make all my kids do some kind of a sport or something. Like they have to be involved in something. And so I put him in ballroom dance. And for the first 2 weeks, he just was so upset with me for 2 weeks. And I knew that it was going to be his thing, but he didn't trust me. And so anyway, now he is an 8 in 3 classes. He teaches the junior high kids. As a senior, he is the head choreographer in the class, and he's been doing it for 4 years and he loves it. And it really was a game changer, but oh my gosh, so uncomfortable for him. So completely uncomfortable.
Oh, well, I mean, there's so much stereotype around it, and it's not overseas. It's much more accepted for men to dance. Now, Dancing with the Stars came out, and that kind of changed a little bit the perception of ballroom dance. But to be a ballroom dancer, number one, you have to think on your feet, no pun intended.
Yes.
So it's very good for thinking ahead and choreographing moves. It's very athletic.
Mm-hmm.
I know very few amateur or professional ballroom dancers who aren't in great shape. And it makes you happy when you get to listen to that music, whether it's salsa or rumba or tango. You get to become a different personality and immerse yourself in that music. And when you're done, there's never been a time when you're not happy at the end of a session. Exactly.
And I think that he was bullied and he struggled a lot in school. And that was kind of his thing that became he went from it being the most uncomfortable place to the stage being where he's most comfortable. He was one of the head actors in the school play, definitely gets the ladies, all of that. And now like the stage is where he is comfortable. So I love that we're talking about this, because I think that in my business, I always talk about you can't grow unless you're uncomfortable. Like nobody grows from a place of comfort. And so, these conversations are so important to have, because I think we all want to be comfortable. Like I've been working out for the first time since my hip replacement, and it sucks. Like it is not fun for me, but I keep thinking, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until this becomes something that's comfortable. It is not comfortable. But I'm growing already, right? I'm committing to myself. I feel good that I'm making myself go and do it again. And, being the older person there and the most out of shape and all of that, it's just been such an uncomfortable place. But I know, because of all the things that I've been through and everything that I teach, that something really amazing is going to come out of it. Hopefully my body, but something nonetheless is amazing is going to come out of it. So this is great. All of this is so great. I'm super excited about your book, and we're not even halfway through it yet.
So, it's just funny because being uncomfortable, you're taking, it's physical uncomfortableness, it's mental uncomfortableness.
Yes.
There's just different types of being uncomfortable. So here I am, when I'm learning this dancing, I'm an Army Ranger. I'm a West Point grad. I'm in the combat arms, but yet I'm taking ballroom dancing.
Yeah, you're like manly man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but so, and I think that brings me to my next point. Don't follow the crowd. You don't always have to follow the crowd, because sometimes your greatest opportunities are those opportunities that other people are criticizing you for or questioning you about.
Yeah.
So my dad said, "What are you ballroom dancing for? Why do you want to do cruise ship?" Well, he didn't understand the impact of what it was. He didn't look into the future. He was looking in the rear view mirror.
Yes.
So you've got to look forward. And in the end, once Dancing with the Stars came out and he saw the experiences I had on the cruise ship, and he had a whole new different version of what that was all about. It's just amazing. I will tell you one funny story on the cruise ship. So I met this one professor of English, and there was an open dance on the dance floor. Now, the dance floor is the largest dance floor on any cruise ship. So it's a big dance floor. Think of at the Marriott, when you're having a wedding, how big that dance floor would be. So I said, "Hey, why don't we do a paso doble?" And a paso doble is a very difficult dance. It's similar to a matador and a bull, if you can visualize that and how you're dancing it. And the professor, she asked me, well, do you know how to dance it? I said, no, I don't. But I think if you take a combination of tango, rumba, and salsa and feel the music and intermingle them, as long as you follow my lead, and I'll give you a good lead, I think we could pull it off. So they start playing the paso doble music, which is very strong masculine music. And we do this dance, intermingling these other dances that to make it look like a paso doble. And she follows me perfectly. And we get a standing ovation when we're done. And it was just an amazing experience that taught you the power of working together, because that's another thing that dance teaches you, how to give and take and put on just a magnificent performance, combining different facets of your life in dancing. So that's kind of what we're doing as ordinary people. And this is what the book's all about, because all of us could write this same book. There'd be different experiences in it. But it's taking these different pieces and combining them together in order to present a masterpiece.
So there's been a lot of conversation with me and clients, my husband, my kids lately about like our world right now is kind of in this place where everything you see on Instagram or, you know, all kinds of social media is about me. It's like, you need to learn, you need to work on yourself. Everything is about yourself. And I feel like I feel like a lot is being left out about the power of one another, right? The power of two, the power of three. Nothing alive on this planet is alive because it was by itself. Like I think about a tree needs soil and sun and water. And, you know, I think that our world is kind of trying to move away a little bit from that. But I love when you talk about like, you probably could have pulled that dance off and been fine and maybe even still gotten a standing ovation, but it wouldn't have been that dance, right? Without that other person. And so I think leaning on other people and real learning from other people, right? It's so important to sometimes be led, sometimes be followed, and just really like be okay with not doing every single thing yourself.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that willingness to give and take and communicate, and it could be nonverbal communication. I think I write in the book where me and my wife go through some experiences and tough times to where we start drifting apart. How do we come back together? I mean, sometimes a simple note can do it. Sometimes a simple flowers can do it. Sometimes a verbal thank you can do it. And I think reaching out to others and asking them for help. What do you think? What's your opinion? I think as men, generally speaking, we have a really hard time doing that. So another way to get uncomfortable is as a guy, you guys do it great. I think the ladies have this licked to a certain extent, is to reach out to your friends and ask, hey, I need your help. Can I get your advice on something? Can I treat you to a beer or coffee or whatever it might be? And really, you know, sometimes be vulnerable and ask for that help.
Yeah, I think that's super good advice.
So to that end, you know, after getting bullied, I asked my dad for some help. And I said, hey, Dad, can you teach me how to box? And he said, I didn't know how to box, Tim, at that time, but I can certainly introduce you to someone who knows someone on the police department who can teach judo. So I started taking this frustration of getting bullied and started learning judo. And I became pretty good at it to where it helped me become a really good wrestler in high school, which helped me get into West Point. So these building blocks of taking adversity and these challenges in your life and finding something, in your case, you know, your son's going to be a tremendous ballroom dancer and teacher, you know, and turning it into positive is really what we have to figure out, and asking for help.
I agree. I think it sounds like you had all these experiences that could have held you down, and it just like you made this choice in the moment to not let it hold you down and to become something bigger. I'm kind of getting it now. So you were ordinary, because I'm like, this guy, everything I read about him or know about him, he is not ordinary. So it's nice. It's good to hear that from someone. Like, anybody that's coming from any walk of life, any situation can make it positive or negative. One of my kids the other day said to me, I think she's 12 and she's just very inquisitive. And she says to me, I think you know that saying about the glass is half full, glass is empty kind of thing. She didn't really remember what it was, but she's like, I think like you're the one that has the full glass and I'm the one that has the empty glass. And I thought, it's probably because I've been through so much adversity and you've been a little bit spoiled. So maybe we need to mix it up a little bit, you know? And it was just kind of funny that she had that, but really it's like in that moment of adversity, which way are you going to go? And I think oftentimes we don't actually realize that we can go up from there. Like we don't have to, you know, take it at that point and go down. We can move upwards. And so I love that. This is so fun talking to you because you remind me a lot of me in that, like, oh, well, I was just given this thing and then I just decided to do this other thing with it. And now I'm really good at this other thing, you know, and it's nice to be able to be that person, to have that. I think some of us, it's more natural and some of us, it's not natural. So what would you say to those who it's not necessarily natural? Like, what's something that you could have, like maybe a thought changer or some advice that you could give that would have somebody today that is normally ordinary in their mind and they don't think that they can be anything else? Like, what would be one word of advice that you'd give that they would be able to use today to maybe realize that they don't have to stay in that ordinary place?
Yeah, I think one way is, and you mentioned it, is reach out to others, talk to others, ask for help, ask for advice. And then the other thing, though, is serving others. You know, sometimes to not be ordinary, you can find a cause that you really believe in. And, you know, maybe it's the Ronald McDonald House for abused moms and women. Maybe it's, you know, the Pet Project, which helps, you know, abused animals. Maybe it's helping the homeless, something. And then I think what happens is it opens up opportunities to really find your happy place. Mm-hmm. Because in those places of service, you meet some very ordinary, extraordinary people that want to help you because they see the potential, they see the goodness in your heart, and they open up some opportunities for you. And I think that's really a big deal. And I think that's one way, just by giving back to others in a very ordinary way from a good place to where you want to help this particular organization or person. I think there's good things that happen as a result of that being in service to others.
I agree. I think service is the very number one best way to get out of ourselves, to get out of our own issues and to, you know, not be the victim and not be the woe is me kind of person. And it can start with little things, right? Like taking cookies to your neighbor or one of our neighbors we met, we just moved into our house about 9 months ago, like right before COVID hit. And I can't remember what we went down there for, but just a few houses down, we went to our neighbors and we wanted to see their backyard. That's what it was, because we're doing landscaping. So we walked into their backyard, and right as we walk into their backyard, their daughter comes in screaming, and she has like this big sliced open knee. Mm. My husband's a doctor, and they look at him, they're like, what do we do? And he's like, oh, we could probably put that together. Well, I'm a mom of a lot of kids. And so I take over because this is what I do, right? I come home, I get the butterfly, you know, I get all the cleaning supplies because we happen to have those, and go back and I put her knee back together. And a couple weeks later, I'm over there visiting her mom because we became really good friends after that. And it's so great, you know, just by one thing of service. Well, I'm over there visiting her, and she says, you know, my daughter the other day, we were somewhere and someone said, well, your knee just looks so good now. And she's like, yeah, my neighbor put it together. And they said, well, we thought her husband was the doctor. And she's like, yeah, but Shirley, she just does a little bit of everything. Like, anyway, so it was just kind of funny. And so then all of a sudden in the neighborhood, like we have a little bit better of a reputation, right? Which ends up serving us in the end. But we really just did what came natural. And that was just like immediately, like no matter what, we drop everything and just serve. And it's so important. And you always just feel so good after that. And I didn't even, I didn't even think about the impression that we would leave or not, but now we're really close to that family, and it's super fun to just have that memory of the first time we met. Like,
yeah, and it raises
in your blood.
It raises your standard of living and your happiness quotient, because now your neighborhood's your neighborhood, and
Yes.
you're liked and you like them, and there's a trust level there. And I think the biggest thing we're fighting through today in our world is that trust quotient. So, how can we get to a place to where we're serving others and there's trust there? So that's something. I just came back yesterday from a trip, and there were so many opportunities of doing some things. So, for example, it started out where someone needed a dollar bill at the 7-Eleven as I was getting gas. So it's not a big deal. It's a couple bucks, no problem. Then the next thing was we were getting ready to get on board. It was Southwest, and who goes first? And go ahead, you guys go first. No big deal. Go right ahead. There's that little spot where there's a little tension, and then the next little thing was someone didn't even know they needed help, but I could just intuitively feel she was going to need help with her suitcase. So I said, hey, can I get this suitcase for you so you don't have to worry? She was on the inside seat. I was in the outside seat. And she's, that would be really helpful. So I think these little touch points of service to others, it doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time. But if everyone started doing that type of stuff, and you exponentially, it makes the world a better place to be.
Because when you are in service of others, you're happy. You just are. And I think I've talked about this a lot on my shows, and people are probably tired of hearing it, but I just always talk about this story when my kids we were talking about service, and I was telling them that they need to serve each other, because when we serve other people, it helps us to love them more. So if we're upset with somebody, like if they're fighting, serve them, because it helps you to love other people. Like, we think that it makes the other person feel loved, which it does, but we forget that it makes us love more when we serve. And when we're loving and serving, and what else is there? You just feel good about yourself, which raises your confidence, which gives you an ability to do more things, which gives you a more ability to serve, right? So it's just like this upward spiral.
I think being an altar boy at 10 and walking, we had probably a half a mile walk, and not a big deal, but in the snow in winter, we didn't get driven. My mom didn't know how to drive, and my dad was on duty. So I'd wake up at 5:30, I'd walk in the snow. You could hear the crunch of the snow. You have to visualize this, because I know in Phoenix, there's not that much there, but in Buffalo, we get 323 inches of snow.
Wow.
In a typical year. That's more than Anchorage, Alaska. If you could.
And it's actually colder snow back there for some reason. Like, the snow is just the temperature of snow is just colder.
Yes, it's just a wet coldness instead of a dry coldness. But walking and then going as a young boy and serving the priest at 6 a.m. Mass, you just felt a sense of accomplishment to help the people get their communion. And at that time, we had like a little host. You didn't take it in your hand, it was taken on your tongue. So I had to hold a little plate underneath, so if it fell, it wouldn't hit the ground. But just the mere fact of the experience of getting up, walking in the snow alone in the dark, going into this big cavernous church that reminded me of a Hunchback of Notre Dame type of, and then, serving these people, was just a great feeling that led to being a good paper boy every day, that led to wanting to serve in the military. And on that thought of service, since we're on the topic of being in service to others, I really think what would be really helpful for all of us, especially our younger adults, would be to serve in some capacity for 2 years. Maybe it's a mission if you're very faith-based. Maybe it's helping the poor or disadvantaged read and write. Maybe it's helping farmers that are struggling to farm better techniques. Or maybe it's serving in the military. And the reason I think that's so important is you get to assimilate with other people from outside your home area, and you learn so much how to get along and how others live.
Right. Oh, I think that's so. And I've also heard that 2 years is like how long it takes for you to kind of change who you are too, and that type of thing. So my husband served a 2-year mission for his church, and you just like you learn a new culture, you learn a ton of stuff. I feel like every high school kid should hear you right now, because like I think this is like so important. It's so important.
The people who have read the book, actually, I think it made Amazon bestseller in the college, tips category. On, how to get through, college per se, or tough time. And I think the reason you're getting, kind of a fun kick out of this is the life lessons in the book are life lessons all of us fight through.
Yeah.
How do we get through it? And I think sometimes as a mom or dad, we can tell kids, but it goes in one ear and out the other. But maybe when you're reading the story, it makes more sense. And I start the book off with learning about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And King Arthur was called Wart. He was a very average, ordinary young man when he was growing up. And he asked for help, and Merlin took this interest in him. With special powers, and he actually became, by legend, King of England, and united all of England. And it's a great way of taking some of the principles in that book and applying it to your own life, whether you're an adult or a young adult, and living a more satisfying, happy life. Yeah,
I love it. So is there anything, I always ask all of my guests this, but is there anything that you regret in your life or wish you could do over?
Well, I always say, don't look at the rearview mirror for sure. Not really. I look back and I say, if I didn't take certain chances and fail, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And the reason I took those chances and failed or had success was because that is what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
So I really, looking back, and I've asked myself that question. I have. I don't regret what I've done. I think I've lived a wonderful, ordinary life.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. And I love that answer so much. So tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Sure.
Website, what the name of your book? I don't even think we gave the name of your book, and if you've got a copy, show it. That's awesome.
Can you see that?
I can. It's an extraordinarily ordinary life. I love it.
Yeah. And it's on Amazon Books, and that is a way to get the book. I think you'll really enjoy it. There's some great reviews. And then I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook also. So please feel free. All my contact information is there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I am honored to have you as a guest, and it has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shirley.
Thanks so much for listening to the Get What You Want podcast. If you loved it, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave me a review on Apple Podcast. You can also visit me on my website at www.getwhatyouwantguru.com. Would love to hear from you. Now go create.